I'm with Suganthan today, Dr. Suganthan, dentist from Hertfordshire, but also copyright extraordinaire. He is a part-time dentist now. He's working his hours back, and it's because he's found a massive love of copywriting. So he is really an expert in the dentist field, but he's also helping people write their email marketing chains, writing different campaigns for outbound marketing, but also websites and things like that. So welcome, Suganthan. Thank you so much for coming.
Hey Hugo, thank you for having me. First podcast, so it's a bit of a like a deep dive, like a deep launch into the deep end.
Yeah, sure. Well,
But
don't worry about it. It's relaxed. To be honest, it's only my third one anyway, so we're all new on this.
yeah.
So yeah, let's just start with a relaxing question. Tell us a little bit about the driving force behind you becoming a dentist in the first place.
So I think really for me, I didn't actually know what I wanted to do. Once I finished uni, it was a bit like, okay, I had the grades, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I kind of stumbled into dentistry. There's a whole long story into how I got involved with dentistry. And to be honest, like the first 2 years of dental school were tough. I found it difficult. It didn't come easy to me. And a lot of it I didn't really enjoy. It was probably once I started seeing patients that it was a different kind of journey for me after that. And then once I started practicing, then it's like a whole different scenario, you know?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it sounds kind of similar to even myself. I used to be a secondary school teacher,
Mm.
and I kind of fell into that as well. And it was really hard. Like, it's really stressful. And the kids and the students, that's the most fun part. But some of it gets tough, that's for certain. So tell me a little bit about how you found your love of copywriting and how you started moving into that.
So again, I think with the pattern in my life is just I had just happened to stumble into stuff. So with me, I've always been somewhat creative. So I've freelanced since I was about 13. So I've done loads of different things. I used to make music. I used to do audio engineering. I used to do graphic design. Like I dabbled in loads of different things. So I'm the type of person that when I find something that I'm interested in, then I'm like all in. Like I'm constantly on it. I'm on the forums. I'm on Reddit. I'm like reading, watching everything possible. And that's how it was with copywriting. So what it actually was I loved to write, but then I was like, okay, how do I actually make this into some sort of business? Because I'm sure if anyone knows about writing, it's not that lucrative. You know, just generalized writing is not that lucrative. It's quite difficult to break into. So I was like, okay, let me figure this out. And then I heard about this thing called copywriting, which aligned well with dentistry because it's kind of along the set. It uses a lot of the same patterns and techniques that you use in dentistry anyway. I was already curious about psychology and like hypnosis. So I've already done courses in that kind of thing. So then everything kind of just married up and then it just kind of grew from there. So it's all very natural. It wasn't like a calculated decision, like, oh, I'm going to do this. It just one thing rolled into another and then here I am.
Fair enough. So tell us, how does it link to dentistry? I guess, first of all, to anyone who's listening and doesn't really know what copywriting is, can you
Mm.
tell them, first of all, what that is? And then secondly, I guess, like you said, how does it link to dentistry?
Yeah, sure. So copywriting is basically just writing words that sell. So it's like the way I explain it to most people is that it's like being a salesman, but except you're just doing it in writing rather than kind of knocking on people's doors and getting doors slammed in your face. But it's writing words to persuade people to do something. So often it's to sell a product. So a lot of the time, if I'm hired, it might be because someone's got a product they want to sell or a service they want to provide to someone, and I might be writing an ad or an email or a website that encourages a customer to go from point A to point B. But it's not always that. It can be stuff as simple as if someone needs to sign up for an email list or you want someone to sign up to your newsletter, it could be writing copy for that. So it's just trying to take someone from point A to point B, and the copywriter is guiding you from point A to point B, essentially.
Sure. No, that's a great explanation. And I guess, how would a dentist use copywriting? Obviously, email list is something really useful. How else have you seen them feeling like, okay, that's something dentists could really use?
There's quite a lot in dentistry, actually. I think, strangely enough, having started copywriting, I've noticed that it's quite underused in dentistry. I think a lot of the stuff, a lot of the advertising and marketing that I see in dentistry is a lot of cookie cutter, same approaches used across the board. And that's where I think copyright is probably more handy, because more than just writing words, it's also about establishing your brand. Like, what's your tone of voice? How does your practice differentiate from the one down the road? And everyone's kind of marketing Invisalign and implants, but what separates your practice from the one down the road? So I think that's kind of the way that dentists can benefit from it. In terms of like Facebook ads, for example, I see so many Facebook ads that are just the same thing.
£1,000 contribution to
Yeah,
Invisalign.
yeah, yeah.
Exactly the
It's
same.
just, yeah, exactly. Like, if you're a patient, you can't differentiate between 5 different practices because they all say the same thing. They've all got finance options. They're all affordable payment plans and £100 a month. It's all the same stuff, but people underestimate the value of establishing a brand. And I think the best practices have a brand, and they capitalized on that from early.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. And you can get brand going through everything, not just your writing, but also some of the products that you sell or that come along with treatments and things like that. It all just tells that wider story of who you are. And I guess that's exactly where you come in. So that's really interesting. So what would your recommendation maybe be to a dentist who's listening right now thinking, God, that actually sounds like my Facebook ads. We've been running that same one for the last 4 years. What's like the secret sauce that you could give them just as a quick, showing a bit of their brand voice?
It sounds really cliche. I think the problem with copywriting, sometimes what I say to people is like, if something's worked multiple times for someone else, it's probably going to work for you. Which I think what I mean by that is like finding your unique aspect to your practice. And like, a lot of people think, okay, well, we're just a dental practice, we do the same thing as everyone else. Like, how do we differentiate? But it could be anything, right? Like, I'm going to use myself as an example because that's probably the best way to explain it. Like, for example, I did a hypnosis course. Now, there's not a lot of dentists out there that do hypnosis, but my bread and butter dentistry, what I do nearly every day, is what every other dentist in the UK or in the world probably does on a daily basis as well. But the fact that I do hypnosis and I've got these other interests kind of give me a different edge, a different approach to things. And I think a lot of dentists have that. It's just about finding what that is, and not trying to. I think the second thing is not coming across too commercial. I think when you're trying, with dental practices, when you're coming across like a commercial entity, like a big corporate entity, it's off-putting. Like, patients want to have that one-to-one connection, that warm feeling. So like simple stuff, adding pictures of your team to your website or your Facebook ads, TikTok ads, whatever it may be, or like little videos. You don't need to be doing dances and stuff. It doesn't need to be anything like crazy. It could literally, it's just showing your face. It gives so much warmth to what you're trying to market. So yeah, I just think keep it simple. Like, don't overdo it.
I totally agree with you. I mean, one of the difficulties is there's so many dental practices. There's now big groups, literally like owned by hedge funds and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
that feeling of like your local dentist in many areas has slightly gone. But there is a rise of it, and I think that actually the mass sort of democratization of digital marketing and advertising more generally allows for everybody to put forward their brand. Which I think is quite exciting because it brings back this feeling of the family dentist or the person who's in the community.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. So what would you say, sorry, would be like your top tips maybe for a dentist who's thinking, okay, I'm going to rewrite my email marketing. I'm going to rewrite my subscription email follow-ups, for example. What would be maybe a top tip that you should do and something that you really shouldn't do?
Interestingly enough, I think dentists need to tread carefully when it comes to email. So there's a lot of kind of GDPR, data protection stuff that you need to be really careful with. So if you're going to do that kind of thing, I definitely get your consent you know, fully sorted out. You know, you need to have some sort of form or something that um, patients can give consent to be notified about, you know, marketing campaigns or whatever it may be. So that's like a huge thing, because it can land you in a lot of hot water if you don't do it correctly. And I think that's what, for me as a copywriter, I've even had to learn about. It's something I was aware about, but you know, I've been doing email marketing for other industries, and then trying to bring that across to dentistry, you have to kind of adapt your approach, because I don't want to be landing a practice owner in some deep problems
Mm.
because of something that I've done, you know. So uh, if I was gonna, now, provided you've got that kind of consent and all that stuff wrapped up,
And the
I think,
unsubscribe link as well is important.
yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. If anything, actually, you know, if you're incentivizing people with certain things, so what I mean by that is, I've seen certain practices that will say 25% off your next, you know, checkup if you put a Google review
Yeah,
down for us. You know, that's a big problem.
that's
Google don't like that. The GDC don't like that. Everyone, every regulatory body doesn't like that. So I think, you know, any
you
sort of
shouldn't be doing
incentive.
that outside of dentistry personally, but yeah, I agree.
Yeah. But yeah, in terms of things that I think would work, uh, I think providing value. Like, I think people underestimate. I know there's like again, like I said at the beginning, like, it's a lot of the stuff that I'll say probably sounds like cliche advice, but honestly, it just works. Like, when you are providing value and you're educating your patients on stuff, and then you follow up with a sale, then it's fine. But I think if you're just constantly selling, and you're just sending, you know, 2, 3 emails a week, and it's just constantly you promoting your latest offer, patients are going to unsubscribe, or they're going to get annoyed and report you or whatever. You know, that's when you can land yourself in hot water.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with you. It's that's, you say that it's cliche, but it's just because I guess you've really taken the time to educate yourself on it. But that really is what everybody's trying to do now, to make sure that you're providing value to whoever it is that you're trying to speak to. And that's why things like TikTok and Facebook and Instagram can be really interesting places to provide value to your audience. And for dentists, for example, teach them about how to floss with a video and how to do it properly, or break down misconceptions and things like that. There's so many people doing it really well, and I think it makes a big difference.
Yeah, I mean, that's the funny thing, right? Like, you mentioned about doing TikToks on, say, how to floss or something like that, and a lot of the dentists that I know, you know, my peers, like literally my colleagues, would find that cringe. But the thing is, it's like, you almost, and I've learned this as I've tried to grow my copywriting business. You have to do things that kind of push yourself out of your comfort zone a bit. And it's only cringe because you probably know it works, but you're like, oh, if it flops, then I look like an idiot. And honestly, no one cares. Like, the internet moves so fast now. Like, even if it was terrible and it's like the worst possible thing that's ever landed on the internet, people will forget about it. And it's going to be, you know, tomorrow there'll be a new video, and then people's attention spans, you know.
Definitely. And actually, in some ways, I mean, that might even be a sort of quite an interesting pivot or niche to take down, is the awkward dentist. And you could just be that person who's like a little bit older, never been on social media before, and just makes, you know, dad jokes or
Yeah,
cringe videos.
exactly.
That's a kind of thing that can work really nicely.
Yeah, you don't know what's going to take off, right? Like, you can't predict um what's going to connect and what's not. And I think that's the most interesting thing about this, not just copywriting but marketing in general, and like content production. You don't know what's going to hit. Some
Mm.
things you think are gonna, you know, you've planned it to the T and you've got it all sorted out, and you think this one is going to be the one, and it absolutely flops. And then it just ends up being that one that you just, you know, it could have been a piece of content that you just shot off your phone in your car on the commute to work. Like, and that's the one that happens to take off.
Mm. Yeah, it's crazy. And actually, having said that, or having said what I was saying earlier, you don't have to have a gimmick necessarily. I think what you were saying before about just giving away some of your character when you're providing value is fine. So like
Mm.
just being true to giving help to people and just putting your own personal touch on that. And it doesn't have to be that you sing or dance, like you said. It can just be that maybe you're a laid back person. That's what you do. Maybe you're an awkward person. Maybe you're a really kind of mathematical person. Whatever it is, just show your true character. And plus, I think the key with that is it makes everything else so much easier because it's what you naturally do.
100%.
Yeah. So tell me, a lot of people, they obviously have landing pages which they run from their adverts. They send their leads straight to their landing page. What do you think? What's your take, I guess, on dental landing pages that you see at the moment, and how do you think they could be improved to someone who's listening?
Um, well, if you're running ads specifically for a particular treatment, I tend to recommend you have a specific landing page for that. What some dental practices will do is they'll run their ads to the dental website, like the whole website, where the website they're ranking on Google. And the big problem with that is you want to give a customer minimal, or a potential patient, minimal possible opportunity to click away. So on your dental website, you'll have an about us, meet the team, um, finance, fees, all this kind of stuff, price list, and you're giving your patient, they might have come from an Invisalign ad, but now they've clicked onto your website and they thought, oh, meet the team. I want to see what these people look like. Okay, they click on that. And then their mind drifts off, and then they've forgotten that they landed from the Invisalign ad, and that's what their mind was on at that time. But they clicked off it, and then all of a sudden their attention's gone. You've zapped it. So I think having a specific landing page for whatever treatment that you're trying to market at the time is best. Like, that's best practice. And it's what most industries do, but I think dentists, and I get it, the excuse I tend to hear is that, okay, we splashed out about £2,000 or whatever it is on our website. We're not going to set up another website specifically for ads. But then I just think, you know what, it's ads themselves can be expensive. It's an investment, don't get me wrong, but it's expensive from the start. So adding a few 100, or even it's a landing pages, it doesn't have to be that well designed, it doesn't have to be amazing. It just needs to give you the right information, needs to be written well, laid out well, and that's what converts.
Mm. Well, yeah, actually, thank you massively for that clarification, because I guess I'd kind of assumed that everyone was running onto landing pages. But of course, it's a sensible thing to say that there is a massive difference between website and landing pages. And if you are running marketing ads, you should always do it straight to a landing page, just like you said, that's specific to the offer. So thanks so much for that clear breakdown for anyone. I guess now we can go back to the original question, which is when you are writing that landing page, which let's assume, it's got the clear offer at the front about this is our Invisalign offer, this is what they can get. It goes through a few details all on one page. And I guess I'll just add a few extra bits to what you said, which is that you can make it so there's nowhere to click except for to request more information or to become a lead or to book an appointment. So there's no clicks, it's just one long page and it's all full of the information specifically for that offer. So I guess that's where you can come in. From a copywriting standpoint, let's maybe talk about the offer at the front, because I personally think that when we're running our ads, that's one of the key bits, because a lot of the time people don't look down to the bottom. I mean, I know from my own experience, I just scroll to the very bottom of the website or the landing page just because I want to see, have they taken the time to make this thing look nice? And if they have, then I assume, okay, so at least they're pretty serious. Now let's go back to the top. And then I read the offer, and then the crafting of the offer, I think, is really important for you to just think like, okay, yeah, let's do this. Let's get on the phone to them straight away. So, I mean, what was your kind of system for creating an awesome offer in the headline, that is?
So it's interesting with dentistry. Again, it's one of those industries where you have to tread very carefully. So with an offer, a lot of the time you can't guarantee results. So I wouldn't kind of go off, saying straight smiles in 6 months with this thing, because a lot of us dentists know Invisalign, for example, could be 6 months that the initial treatment plan was for, but they can last 12-18 months, and then all of a sudden you've got a really angry patient. So you just want to be careful with that. But in terms of headlines that convert, a lot of the time I tend to split tests. So for those that don't know what split testing is, it's basically I would write like 5 iterations of a headline, and then say 5 people land on the page, they would be, all 5 of them would be given a different headline. And then you'd get to see, okay, which one converted and then why it converted. So it's difficult for me to answer your question, mainly because I think with the offer in dentistry, I don't think it needs to be as much of a clear cut, offer as such. I just think you need to provide the least resistance for the patient to book that appointment. So whether that be, if you have some sort of Calendly or some sort of calendar link at the bottom, they can literally just click, okay, 10 a.m. next Wednesday, there's a slot available for a telephone consultation. Cool. Click that, boom, it's done. There's no call our reception, and then you've got to call reception, and then you've got to register, put your name and your details and all this stuff down. It offers too much resistance. So you want to try and minimize as much of the resistance as you can. I recognize I didn't really fully answer your question. Kind of, I have a tendency to go off on a tangent sometimes.
No, there's still lots of interesting nuggets in there. I mean, not least the idea that for every click or every action that someone has to take, the drop-off point is huge. So you come through an ad, you've clicked on the ads, then you've clicked learn more, you've read more, then you've clicked on the thing, you've clicked, and each time a whole number of people just get turned off each time. And if you're ultimately trying to get them to book an appointment or, request a callback or something like that, then you want to get them to that straight away. So that's really interesting.
I think one thing I would add actually there is kind of to the offer, but the landing page on that note is make your benefits tangible to the customer. Like, it's really easy as dentists to think, okay, Invisalign, yeah, obviously you just straighten teeth, but it's not that obvious to everyone. Not everyone knows what Invisalign is. Not everyone knows what the benefits are going to be. It's not just straight teeth. You get to smile again. You get to go out and, pose for photos without covering your mouth, be able to clean your teeth easier, not have to get floss stuck in between your teeth because now they're straight and they're easier to clean between, things like that. Make it tangible and make it very, sensory based. So you want to try and appeal to people's senses as much as possible. That's one of the big things they teach you with when it comes to copywriting, is try to make things, so that people can visualize it, they can smell it, they can hear it, whatever it may be. You want to do that rather than give people logical facts.
You don't want to get bogged down in kind of clinical jargon. You want to get them imagining how great it's going to be when they can talk without doing this, or when they can smile in their wedding photos and all that kind of stuff. Exactly. Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I do quite a lot of training with TCOs talking about trying to understand why a patient is inquiring in the first place. And whenever I say that, everyone says, oh, yeah, well, they're just inquiring for Invisalign or to get straight teeth. And I go, that's great. But then you want to dig a bit further and say, okay, but why behind that? Do you want it? And that's when they start unleashing the, oh, well, I've got a wedding in 12 months or, oh, this and that. And I always feel awkward in social circumstances. And it's once you've got that it just becomes so much easier to actually understand them anyway. And therefore, human rapport gets built up and ultimately it's easier to kind of get them fully set up the treatment plan.
Definitely.
What about, let's talk briefly about offers on the ads as well, because I think that's quite interesting. I see so many dentist ads and, sometimes people will complain saying, oh, the lead quality is a bit rubbish. They're just shopping around and all this kind of stuff, or they're not really interested, or they just want free things. And then sometimes when you look, you see that basically they're just saying like massive discount off this or massive discount off that. And that's the whole focus. I don't want to kind of take the answer away from you, but I'm sure you've got some great thoughts on why we think that maybe that's not the best route to go down.
Yeah, I think free consultations, you're gonna invite a certain type of patient, and they aren't bad patients, they're not bad people, they're just people that are curious. So it's nothing to do with them, it's more to do with how you're positioning yourself. And I think when you position yourself as free, massively discounted, I've got dentists in my area that I've seen on billboards that are doing treatment for, like, I don't even know how they're managing to keep the show running. Like, I don't know how they've managed to keep the lights on. It's such a low price, and I'm assuming what they're trying to do is come from a loss leader. So they're trying to go in super low prices and then bump up, once they've got the customer base. And I think that's going to erode your patient's trust so much. If you go in thinking, okay, this is budget dentistry and this is, suitable for my budget, and then all of a sudden 6 months down the line you're paying double the price, they're not going to be happy. You're going to get bad reviews. I just don't think it's the way forward is not to do free consultations. I think what works well, if you can get them, are testimonials. I think they work really, really, really well, because people love to see real life examples of what they're going to get. Like, you love to put yourself in that person's shoes. If you see someone that looks the same as you or similar to you, similar age, and you look, wow, look at the teeth, like you automatically want to be in their shoes. So you're more likely to convert in that sense. So I know that a lot of the ads that convert really well are those
Mm.
testimonials, um,
Yeah, and
before and afters.
reactions as well. Reactions to people's kind of uncovering.
Yeah, yeah. That kind of stuff. You know, it's all more. I just think it's far better to do that than try and go for the bottom of the barrel, and then you're just
I
shooting
agree.
yourself in the foot, really.
I think there are two things that's worth mentioning briefly, though. One is that there's nothing wrong with the free consultation and providing it. It's just that that should be something that's like, oh, yeah, and by the way, it's a free consultation. That's how you start the process, as opposed to
Yeah,
like, come on in, we've got a free consultation, and that being the key selling point. And then the
yeah, yeah.
second, just because a lot of people do that, and it does work well, I guess,
Mm,
just
mm,
later down the line. And then the other thing I wanted to say, which is just kind of touching on what you were saying about having the curious people. One of the things I kind of speak to people when they sign up to our service is that a lot of people always want to find like the top 5-10% of patients, and I completely understand that, like the wealthiest and things like that, they're often really organized and all these kind of things that they want. And obviously that's great, and we can target for those people, but at the same time you've got to understand that everybody wants those people, so it's the most competitive. And also those people, they're used to kind of going out and just getting what they want quite quickly because they have money. So if they decide, oh, I want to get straight teeth, they just quickly do some research, they find who they want and they go. Whereas if you're running ads and you're trying to bring people in, there's actually a whole 90% of the population who, like you've said before, maybe they don't actually know that much about Invisalign. Maybe they need a bit more education. And I think it's important not to just like write them off completely and think, oh, because they don't really know, they're not really serious. Because
mm.
often we buy things we don't know about. Ultimately, none of us knew what Netflix was. And even my granddad didn't know what that was, obviously, and he's even watching it now.
Yeah,
So education is a really important part. Anyway, I,
yeah.
I, feel, I feel like I've kind of hijacked it there, but I just wanted to touch on that.
No, I completely agree. I think actually what you were saying, about the free consults, you're absolutely right. Like, that's not me saying don't ever do it. I just think when you are offering a free consultation, if anything, if you can do like a video or a phone consultation, it would arguably be a bit better, because then you could filter out the leads that you think aren't going to go very far. And the leads that are just trying to seek more information, they might just be able to do that over a video call.
Hmm.
But if you give patients the option, maybe video consultation or in person. Some people, I think that's an easier way to differentiate between like leads that aren't going to really go anywhere and the leads that could be quite warm.
Mm. I mean, I always think it's good just to have a kind of phone call beforehand. So you get them booked in, but like you do a confirmation call where you actually go through some questions and you really try and learn about whether they are actually suitable before you get them in. Because yeah, that's a bit of a pain. But I always like people to push them to get in because the scan, as everyone says, does all the talking and all that kind of stuff. And when they actually are with you, it's a completely different
Yeah.
um, commitment and intent. So I've really only got about one more question I just wanted to touch on, which is that do you think that the dentists and dental practice owners should be providing their staff, like their TCOs or even reception, to have copyright training or to maybe have some coaching about copywriting for their interactions with patients?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, even dentists could value from copy, copywriting, because copywriting is okay. What I do is for businesses, but copywriting is so valuable in just anything. Like, we all write stuff on a daily basis, and even as dentists, like, even if you don't have a business bone in your body and you just want to be a dentist, a general dentist, you're writing referral letters and things like this that you're going to try and everyone's trying to get an outcome. So if you learn how to persuade and influence people, and use some of these copywriting techniques, it can come in really useful. Like you said, with TCOs and the dental team in general, they have to sometimes write treatment plans. A treatment, the well, they're not writing the treatment plans themselves, but they will be presenting the treatment plan to the patient. So understanding copywriting and how to understand pain points and people's desires and that kind of thing, I think would help massively in converting.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's really important. And also, when you do it in the written form, it helps you to process your own words in the spoken form, I think.
For sure.
So let's just round it off here. My last question, and thank you again for coming. I think this has been really insightful. My last thing to just leave it with would be for a dentist maybe who's watching this and is thinking, right, I now know what copywriting is. I've heard some quite interesting ideas. I think I'm going to like go back and do a copywriting audit of my practice. What do you think they should do first? And what do you think they should do in general, I guess?
I think the easiest place to start is probably your website. Um, for most practices, that's probably the easiest place to start, and just look at this is easier said than done, but try and look at it from a patient's perspective. Or if you struggle to do that, then literally ask your mum, your wife, your husband, whoever, to look at your website and just give them like give it an honest critique. Like, do they know what you're on about? Are you using too much flowery language? So a lot of practices, what they'll do often is they'll think that they're writing something like super poetic or like super descriptive, and that's not gonna, people like simple language. I always say try and write something that someone in primary school can pretty much understand. You don't, if they can't understand it, if someone who's under the age of about 11 can't understand what the website's about, is you're probably using some sort of terminology that's switching them off, you know. So
Mm.
actually, if anything, probably just show a 10-year-old, like, see if they can figure out what you're talking about. If they're like, I don't get it, then
Yeah.
figure out what it is
It's a
that's
nice
going wrong.
idea. I know there are websites where you can put your text in. I can't remember what it's called, and it will then like feed out text that's massively reduced. But I
Yeah,
do think it.
actually, on that, yeah. That's a good point. That's one big tip. Use an app called Hemingway. So there's an
Oh,
author
that's
called
it. Yeah.
Ernest Hemingway. It's named after him. And then you copy and paste your stuff into this app. It's completely free. And when you do that, it will tell you if you're using too long a sentence, or using too long a word, or you're using too many adverbs, or whatever it may be. So that's
Mm.
probably a good place to start. Yeah.
Yeah, and aptly named Hemingway because I don't know how much Hemingway you've read. I mean, I've only read one book, but the small one, Old Man and the Sea. But it's all really short sentences. That's like his style. He never says, "The man walked in elegantly, smelling of roses, and looked at the crisp light coming through the window." He just literally says, "The man walked in. He was looking smart. Full stop. He saw the window. Full stop. The light was coming in. Full stop." And actually, it's quite refreshing when you read it like that.
Yeah. As in, if you think about it, he was ahead of his time, because that's built for today's communication. Like,
Mm.
especially on the internet, there's so much out there. No one wants to really fish through a bunch of descriptive terminology.
Yeah, you know when you just open an email and you just open it up and you just see like this much text and you scroll down and just think, oh gosh, I don't even know if I'm going to read that.
Yeah, yeah. Exactly. And the final thing I'll probably add on to that is, this is a tip that I use when I write, is when I'm writing, I write line by line, obviously. And when I'm writing a line, I'll think, so what? That's what I ask myself every time. I ask, so what? If I can't answer that, then it was probably useless line in the first place. So by that, what I mean is, if you're writing something and then you think, okay, so what? So what does that mean for your customer, or who cares? Like, if you can't answer that question within about 5-10 seconds, yeah, axe it. It wasn't needed.
Hmm, very interesting. Yeah, I think a lot of people struggle. They get a bit verbose, which is one of my favorite words actually, considering that it in itself is like borderline verbose to even say the word. But
Yeah.
anyway, well, thank you so much. Honestly, I really enjoyed this chat. I love talking about writing myself. Like I mentioned earlier, I used to be a history teacher. So a
Mm.
large part of that is writing, and that's what I did at university as well. So, and obviously we write like marketing campaigns and stuff now, so it's fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you so much, Suganthan. I really appreciate it. If anyone is thinking about getting some copywriting, they should 100% get in touch with you. You can find you on LinkedIn. There's loads of great videos and loads of pretty entertaining posts, to be honest. That's how I first came across you. So yeah, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it.
No problem. Really good experience.